We're a loading spot. If I get my saddlebag back tomorrow, I'm going for a motorcycle ride.
I would think somebody would be putting together
What is it?
a ride or something here. Did you have
30 seconds because we're ready to go.
No, they always do it.
Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting. The meeting will start in 30 seconds. Web streaming has been activated.
frozen?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. We're certainly pleased to have you all here today. It is Tuesday, January 3rd, and we'll start tonight's meeting with a roll call of the City Council.
Council members Aguilar. Here. Anderson.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Entenmann.
Here.
Erpenbach. Here. Jameson.
Here.
Karski. Rolfing.
Here.
Thank you very much. We'll start our meeting, as we always do, with an invocation. Tonight, we're very, very pleased to have Pastor Kip Rosen from the Asbury United Methodist Church here in Sioux Falls, which happens to be Councilor Erpenbach's and Councilor Brown's church. So it's a special day for us. So thank you, Pastor, for being here. We'll have the invocation. We'd ask you all to please stand. And then after that, as we always do, we'll follow with our Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Kip, please.
Let's pray. Oh, gracious God, you are the creator and the sustainer of all life, and so we give you thanks that you are always with us. You've promised to always be a part of your life, our lives, and you share your grace with us. I thank you for being present with us tonight and available to us, and I would lift our community to you tonight, oh God, in this new year, and pray that you might bless our community. We thank you for such a wonderful place to live, a place where we're able to call home, and just pray that it would be a place where all are at home and all are welcomed. And may it be a place of safety and security. May it be a place of peace and prosperity. I pray that it would be a place of compassion and generosity. And may it be a place where all are welcomed. Please guide our leaders in the direction that you would have them go. Remove all temptation from their path and give them the will to stand up for what's important. Grant to Mayor Huther, to our City Council, and to all who are in positions of responsibility and authority, grant them your grace and goodwill, and bless them with wisdom and discernment, with compassion and kindness and grace. Give them the knowledge and the strength to know your will and to do your will. Fill them with love for truth, for righteousness, for mercy, and kindness. Make them always mindful in this year ahead of their high calling to serve the people of this community with honesty and integrity. I pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless you. Thank you.
Pastor Rosen, again, thank you so much for the invocation. We appreciate it. We would like to recognize some special visitors in the audience tonight. We have Boy Scout Troop number 48 from the Noon Sertoma Club. They are actually led by Mark Shalanta, and if they could stand and be recognized, we'd appreciate it. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We'll then move on to our agenda, and we'll start with our consent agenda. Council, any changes to the consent agenda at all, or any motions?
Move to approve, Jamison.
Second, Erpenbach.
Counselor Jameson's made a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, seconded by Counselor Urbanbach. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
And that is passed 7-0. We then move on to tonight's regular agenda. Council, any changes to the regular agenda?
Move to approve. Brown.
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Brown's made a motion to approve tonight's agenda, seconded by Councilor Urbanbach. If there is no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That's passed 7-0. Thank you. Again, Happy New Year to everybody, and welcome to a new year of City Council meetings. As we always do, we want to give the people of Sioux Falls an opportunity to engage their City Council. If there's anyone who wanted to come forward right now, please do so. We look forward to it. We would ask you to limit your conversation to 5 minutes in length. And if there's a topic that's going to be covered later on in the meeting, we'd ask you to hold those comments until that time. Is there anyone who wanted to speak to the council? Please just come forward. Welcome.
How are we doing? Tim Stanga. One thing that I picked out of the 4 o'clock meeting is when Jamison brought up about tearing down the river ramp. I guess what I'm curious on is what happens to the city property that's on the east side of the river ramp that wasn't addressed. And I guess that I'd like to know what's going on with that property, if it's being bought, or if that's in on the demolition, whatnot. Just curious. About the city charter on everybody getting raises. You know, I haven't seen anybody in Sioux Falls getting raises. I know that you guys say it's in the charter. Yeah, it's got to be changed. But, you know, the only time a person gets a raise in Sioux Falls is going to get a second job. And a lot of people don't like to work a second job. Another thing, we're talking about an ice skating rink. I'm curious on where that's sitting at. I suggested putting one down by the Winter Wonderland last year. Just curious on if that's being taken in consideration since we have all the lights and everything down there. I guess the main thing is when the power company takes all the power grid out down there, if that might be a good spot for an ice skating rink. Just, you know, seeing if that's even being looked at. I don't know how soon they're going to move them, but it sort of looks like they're doing a good headway over at the stockyards. So I guess that's what I'm curious on. Thanks.
Mr. Stinga, thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak to the council? Please come forward, sir. Welcome.
Greetings. My name is David Zokaitis. I live here in Sioux Falls on South Cliff Avenue. I'm here to speak to you tonight about the process of political change, even though I'd rather stay home and do other things, but it's important enough to make me come here and talk to everybody. Doubtlessly, political change and social progress are both very difficult. People, most of us really, want to believe that the world is just fine. As humans, we find the status quo very comfortable. Overcoming the inertia of convention requires patience, determination, knowledge, and tact. It's true everywhere, business, government, institutions. All right? But sometimes organizations are inert. Discussion, knowledge sharing, they just don't seem to work very well to induce change. In these cases, somebody's got to get aggressive and a little more determined. I've got a friend, for example, who's eager to start a website against the Sioux Falls Police Department, and I've so far reined her in because I don't think it's necessary at the moment. I'd prefer, discussions to lawsuits and websites dedicated against things. What I'm here to talk tonight is about my efforts to encourage political change and to redress a wrong that was done to me last year. On November 14th, 2010, I had a terrible experience with Sioux Falls officer Chris, leave his last name out, and promptly charged him with endangerment and harassment. I even, dialed 911, reported a crime. I've since discovered that filing a complaint against a police officer is an exercise in futility. And, that's because it's currently city policy that the police are effectively perfect. I'd like that to change. In the weeks following my bad experience, I sent a letter to the police department and had a few chats with Sergeants Lon and Dave. For some reason, they suddenly became unreachable about the time we were starting to make some progress. I also got a letter from Captain Mark. Again, I'm leaving his last name out. His letter completely ignored any danger to my health and implied that citizens should always comply with whatever police say, regardless of anything else. Well, Mark works for the police department, so we can expect those kinds of ideas from him. But I didn't like his opinion very much, so I wrote to the city council again. And I got a letter from your lawyer, Keith, and he wrote that everything is fine just the way it is. Well, if you consider that Keith works for you to defend you in the city, well, of course everything's fine. I didn't like that response either, so I wrote another letter to everybody here and tried to speak with an important elected official, but I got the runaround and had to call him at home, and he didn't like that very much, but he did actually write back to me at that point. And he wrote, "I believe this matter has been handled fairly, professionally, and thoughtfully." All right, well, if you really thought things had been handled fairly, then maybe you'd let me treat you fairly the way that your guys treated me fairly. All right. So how about writing me a little letter and allowing me to detain you, demand that you provide personal information upon the threat of incarceration, and don't forget about hurting yourself, and I should be able to do all of this with anger and vehemence and a handgun, just for good measure. All right, well. Last month I had a short discussion with Councilwoman Aguilar over there after the regular meeting, and we were interrupted by two different people who were rather rude and inconsiderate. One of them was even a detective, and the police department should allow the democratic process to continue without interruption. And interrupting when somebody's trying to talk to their elected representative is just inappropriate behavior. When working for political change, an astute individual can expect quite a bit of resistance, problem avoidance, blaming other people, interference, and criticism. That's the nature of the beast. Where are we here? That's exactly what happened for me. But I would like at this moment to say that, some good things happen too, and I'd like to thank all of the people I mentioned previously for actually bothering to talk to me. My point in this whole general discussion is that the police department thinks it's perfect. All right? I have statistics to substantiate this observation. According to your website, 72 complaints have been filed against the police department in the past 4 years. Well, that's really not very many, so maybe everybody's doing a good job in the police department. Either that, or people are too cynical to bother complaining. All right. Of the 72 complaints, only 4 were decided in favor of the complainant. 4 out of 72. Apparently, the police department admits to making only one mistake every year. Well, that's pretty amazing. In other words, they're basically perfect. And considering that police review complaints against police, it's no surprise that police are essentially perfect. In other words, if you've been mistreated by the local police, you're pretty much out of luck. The police are perfect, and that's that. It's my recommendation that you have a committee outside the police department review complaints about the police. Well, good way to make things fair and reasonable. Councilwoman Aguilar, I'd like to thank you again for our recent discussion in spite of amazing difficulty. And Mr. Mayor, thanks for your letter. And you can also thank the captain and the lawyer and the sergeants for their time. I have 3 questions that I'd like to present to you individually and collectively. And here they are. 1, do you think the police department is perfect? 2, do you mind if I treat you the way that your guys treated me? And 3, if you answered no to the above, well, why do you let the police department judge complaints against the police department? Well, and that's pretty much all I have. One more point before I close. I'm not here to criticize anybody in particular. It's not a discussion of individuals. The problem really is an improper process that needs to be corrected. And good night. And that's all I have to say.
Mr. Zakaitis, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak to the council tonight on any topic? Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. You have to forgive me. I've had this little frog in the throat, and he seems to not want to be very cooperative. We have had...
Mr. Colby, could you just introduce yourself to the people of Sioux Falls, please?
Robert Colby, citizen.
Thank you.
636 West 21st, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 571050613. Anyhow, we have had some concern from members of the community who are into historic preservation on some of our properties that are older and are part of the background of Sioux Falls going down. Now, we know that not everything can be preserved, but one of the things that needs to be done is there should be something in our ordinance that defines benign neglect. Owning property doesn't give you the right to do any damn thing you want with it, because you couldn't put in a nuclear power plant, you can't put in a large feedlot, other things of that nature on property. It's like the freedom of speech. We have freedom of speech, but you can do certain things, and there are certain things you can't do. And with benign neglect, when you have people who are landlords, particularly, and are mostly interested in the income without the maintenance, this is something that is troubling, because you've seen what has happened. We have the now called the Pettigrew neighborhood, and part of that is because of that same sort of thing. And an ordinance with benign neglect should be very heavy-handed, but you have to have a trade-off. You can't just say, you have to do this, without giving the person an opportunity to react and do some maintenance, upkeep. This might be a way of doing it, and it has to do with some of the things like the TIF and other, what would you call, property incentives that we offer our citizens, that every 25 years a property is subject to or has available a 4-year time frame in which the property can be upgraded without the upgrades going on to the property tax. So you have up to 4 years to do it. So it would be available regardless of whether it's a private individual or whether it's a person who owns an apartment. By doing this, they get to do the maintenance, they get to prolong the effort on the maintenance, and then it comes on at 25% or 20%, depending on whether you choose a 4 or 5 year time frame, in order to upgrade this property. It has a lot of incentive and a lot of value to the community, because every 25 years that would be an appropriate time to do such. It allows for the small contractors to be involved, which is something that generates jobs in the community. If it's done every 25 years, you usually will start from the center of the community and work to the outside edge. Then the person has an opportunity to do upgrade of their particular property, do the maintenance that is necessary. They get a little incentive by not having to have the upgrade come on to the property taxes, and they can only do this once every 25 years from the last time that this was used. So you don't have people constantly going through the process of, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. You have a time frame, and it works with certain types of property that have a certain age. Then, if a person is not willing to do the appropriate maintenance, slumlords included, private citizens, whomever, you have a hammer and say, you've been given the opportunity, but now you have lost the opportunity, and now we will take care of this. And then you can do appropriate, you can apply the cost of doing such to, like they do in the weed board. They put it on the property taxes, and you can't pay your property taxes till you pay the weed bill. You can't pay your property taxes till you pay the maintenance bill. Because I've heard of people over here in the Pettigrew Heights, they have a house, they've got 10 people living in it at $100 a month, and there's improper or the plumbing is bad, the heating is bad, but the people are getting a real low rent. So they get $1,000 off a month, $1,000 a month off a house that isn't worth $500 a month in rent. So it's kind of that they keep draining off the asset, and then after a while it becomes so dilapidated, well then they can tear it down, they get it off the tax rolls, and all it is for them is a win-win. That they aren't doing the due diligence of being responsible citizens for taking care of and maintaining the properties or property that they have, and not being responsible to the community and to their neighbors. Excuse me. Now this is just a seed of an idea. It could use refinement, but I think it's a possibility for making our community better, because it not only gets the property upgraded, but it keeps our local small contractors busy with doing this sort of thing, and there will be a perpetual turn of work as the property gets upgraded as we move on and on. I remember coming to the community when the
Mr. Colby, thank you very much.
I will close.
If you want to, you could certainly expound on your idea even more by sending an email to the council or to me, and we can certainly evaluate that in more detail. But thank you for the idea. We certainly appreciate that.
I thank you very much.
You bet.
I wish I could talk longer, but both of us are working against that.
Thank you.
Your
Mr.
time
Colby.
limit and my
Thank you.
growth. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak to the council tonight? Well, very good. Thank you for your comments. We certainly appreciate them. We're going to move on to item number 22.
Item number 22 is deferred from the City Council meeting on Monday, December 19th, 2011. 2012 renewal of the package liquor license for Gregor's Eastside Liquor Incorporated, Gregor's Eastside Liquor, 1614 South Sycamore Avenue, with an underage sales conviction in 2011. Item 23 is a new 2011-2012 retail malt beverage license for JLB SF Incorporated, JL Beers, to be operated at 323 South Phillips Avenue, main floor, Suite A, with the conditional use permit 2011-10-2 being approved on 11/2/11. Item 24 is a special one-day liquor license for Avera McKinnon to be operated at the Avera Prairie Center, 1000 East 23rd Street, for a chamber mixer on February 2nd, 2012. Item 25 is a special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for Avera McKinnon Foundation to be operated at Avera Behavioral Health Center, 4400 West 69th Street, for a fundraiser on February 11th, 2012.
Thank you. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Lori Hogstead with the City Attorney's Office here for items 22 through 25. Item 22 is deferred from the meeting of December 19th, where we had our group of businesses with underage sales. The applicant was unable to attend that meeting, but he is here tonight, Greg Stahl, and can certainly answer any questions you may have. Also, we have Lieutenant Kaiser here from the Police Department to address questions specifically regarding the sting.
Very good. Could
Would you
Mr.
like
Stahl
him to
come
come
forward,
up?
please?
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Stahl, welcome, and thanks for coming in. The council has always made it a point that whenever there's an underage sale, they would certainly like just some explanation from you in terms of what you and your team are doing to prevent this from happening in the future.
First off, I'm Greg Stahl, owner of Gregor's Eastside Liquor. Thank you for having me this evening. What I've done ever since today, I've opened 9.5 years ago, is everybody that gets hired goes through a training program. They go through TAM. And then after that, I'm constantly reminding them to make sure they card all the time. I mean, that is not anything, or anybody is allowed to come into the place as long as they don't purchase alcohol And anybody that tries to do any kind of purchasing automatically has to show an ID, and it has to be a proper ID of at least a 21-year-old or blue license or something equivalent to some kind of identification like that. So it's an ongoing thing. It's not something you just do and leave and not have anymore or do whatever. It's a constant reminder to every one of your employees. So it's a constant thing, day in and day out. Every time I walk in the store, I remind them to make sure you card.
This is all a common question that often comes up from the council is what in fact happened to this particular employee that sold the liquor to the person who was not of age?
Well, first time, this is the only second time in 9.5 years this has happened in my store. So track record alone tells you that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing to each one of my employees. It was just human error that forgot to card, period. That's all it was. I had a 25-year veteran of retail that was sitting behind that counter, and why they did not pull out or ask for a license, who knows? And I will give the idea to anybody in this room to say, please help me to prevent more of human error and what has to be done there. But if anybody would take a time and the effort to sit down in front of the store and watch the age of those people that come in and out of that store, 21-year-olds don't come into the store at all. They've been treated and trained in our school system and from the police department in our school systems about underage drinking, about the effects of it. You can't go into places like this. You get carded with it. It shows. I mean, it just shows that they don't even come in the door anymore to do it, except when a police officer deliberately brings in an 18-year-old and tries to set up a sting. Well, you're going to catch human error. It's going to happen. There's no ifs and buts about it. None of us are perfect, and it will happen to each establishment eventually during the time of their course of business. So, any other questions from the council?
Councilor Buck?
Specifically, Mr. Stahl, thank you for coming. I appreciate that you come in. This is important to this council and to the community. Specifically, this employee, though, what's the penalty if they're selling to an underage person or they fail the sting in this case?
Well, they get a $250 fine from the city alone, and then the corporation gets a $1,000 fine. And my rules are if you get caught a second time, you're not only fired, but you're going to pay your $250 fine, plus you're going to pay the corporation's fine. So they know I mean business when I'm turning around and saying, we don't serve to 21-year-olds. We don't want to serve to anybody in 20-year-old. I for sure do not want alcohol in anybody's hands that are under age 21. But unfortunately, it's still there. And a lot of it, 99% of it, except for the human error I'm talking about, doesn't come from establishments like mine. It's the brothers and the sisters and the mom and the dads that are coming in that are of age and giving it to underage people. But we're getting stung and we're getting bid on it for something we're not doing. And that's kind of a hard thing to understand what's going on. But I mean, every day that I go into that place, anybody that's there, I say, you make sure you card, you make sure you card, you make sure you card. I just had one new girl start here about 3 months ago, and she's carded every customer that's been there for 9.5 years, and I got people coming up to me going, who is that? What? I've been here for how many times and she's carded me? I said, hallelujah, keep going, darling. Just keep doing what you're doing. So, and then the human error factor comes in. So how do you keep from getting the human error? I'm open. My ears are open to any suggestions. So.
Thank you.
Councilor Brown?
Any changes as a result of this violation?
Yeah. Every time that I've done it, I've lost a good employee because they're so shook up with the system, they don't even want to be a part of it anymore. They need that second job to make ends meet, to do what they have to do, and they're so shook and upset. I wish something else. I would love to be a part of a task force with the city, with the police department, to get some kind of other system instead of have a deliberately walk up in front of somebody's face and do what they're doing, because it shakes up employees. It shakes up your business, shakes up everybody. And it's a black eye that's put in the paper. What does that do for the business? It hurts it. I wish the paper would have been the people that did pass the sting, and it's a much better view of the businesses that actually did the business and did the right thing that they're supposed to be doing.
Councilor Jameson.
A couple things. I think all the other businesses that are provided the same sting operation are the rest of the businesses in the city. So if their name isn't listed, it's because they passed. And so I think that's the reason your name is listed. That's the reason you're here tonight,
Sure.
because you failed. And have you considered any other techniques like a reader of the ID card that determines the age, or having the teller input the age from the driver's license before the sale is completed on the transaction on your computer, anything like that? Any other safety mechanism?
Put it into the computer?
Pardon me?
You mean put...
Something in the cash register that determines that the teller actually looked at the license, enters the date of the driver's license, so it's just another activity that the clerk has to go through to sell and actually have the transaction occur.
True. I've looked at equipment like that, and there is cost to that, and it's cost for companies to do that. The only thing I have found out, it's like a $40 or $50 bill per month to be able to maintain something like that. It's like a $4,000 unit to add to a register to be able to do it. It's just too cost and non-efficient to be able to do it. Now, the first time I was here, I don't know how many years ago it was that, after training my people what to do, how to card, what to do with it, what got me is the employee actually asked for the card, looked at the number, still served, and the thing was still red. Now, I'll give that employee the benefit of the doubt of adding and subtracting and not knowing 21, but being colorblind at the same time, I went, oh man, how could you have done that? So it's just a reminder to make sure that anybody that walks in the door, card them. I don't care how old they are, I don't care what they do, what happens. And the reason why I say that to you, Mr. Jameson, is that when I get Minnesota people in there, I love them. Because the first thing that comes on the table is their driver's license. Period. There's no questions asked. We don't even have to ask for it. They don't have to do it. Before a credit card comes out, before money comes out, their ID comes out on the table. I wish South Dakota would incorporate, or the city of Sioux Falls, or however we need to get it started, incorporate that you do not walk into any liquor establishment or tobacco establishment without ID first. If you don't have it, there's no question, no service. We don't care how old you are.
You could implement that tomorrow if you wanted to.
No, I'm not sure in the state of Minnesota if anybody knows if that is a state law.
I mean, sir, the recommendation that you just made to Councilor Jameson, you could implement that tomorrow if you wanted to at your store.
Oh, we have. After this incident, we definitely have. Since last May, everybody that walks in has to have an ID.
Sounds like a good idea, and if you want to execute it at your store, I would encourage you to do so. Councilor Jameson.
If I could encourage you to meet with Lori, if Lori knows some of those other electronic devices that the operator could maybe evaluate. I don't know what the cost is per month. I've never heard of that, but if there's some help that you could get to consider some other methods to help incorporate the ID check, I think that'd be beneficial to you.
Okay.
Mr. Stahl, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for your guys' time.
Council, last week when we were going through the list of all the businesses who had sold to minors, we had one of the owners, I won't mention her name, but she was a citizen who mentioned that over the years there were a number of times that she had found IDs that were not valid, and she had mentioned that she had notified the police department and that nothing was being done. We had informed the public that we would invite someone from the police department to give us an update, as well as give the people of Sioux Falls an update. With your permission, I'd like to bring Lieutenant Kaiser forward to kind of give us some insight on this topic.
Thank you. Lieutenant Dan Kaiser with the Police Department. I'm in charge of the narcotics and property crime sections in the Detective Division. I did speak with that person the day following that council meeting, and what I did learn was what was being referred to was nothing that was recent history. It was all back from the late 1990s. And since that time, I can assure you that we do follow up on those cases. Sometimes they are difficult with the nature of a fake ID, especially in a wrong name, but we do follow up on those. And some of our statistics with the alcohols to back that up was that 11 people in 2011 were charged with displaying altered, fictitious, or another person's ID card. 559 people were arrested for possession or consumption under the age, and 54 people were charged with furnishing alcohol to people under the age. Are there any other questions?
Lieutenant Kaiser, thanks for being here and for clarifying that for the people of Sioux Falls as well as for the City Council. We appreciate it. Council, any further questions or comments on items 22 through 25?
Move approval on items 22 through 25.
Second Aguilar.
Counselor Bucks made that motion, seconded by Counselor Aguilar. If there is no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Ralston?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 26.
Item 26 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment, petition number 2011-11-2 to Chapter 15.45.070, Plan Development Districts at 111 Northwest Avenue, amending the Sioux Falls Plan Development District Sub-Area Regulations. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Mr. Cooper.
Good evening, Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. This item is a request to amend the allowed land uses within the area that's known as the Sioux Falls Plaza Plan Development District. And this currently includes Howardwood Stadium, the Sioux Falls Stadium, the Convention Center, the arena, and the Sheraton Hotel. This was last updated at the time that we included the Convention Center out in this particular area. And what we would like to do is amend this plan development by adding additional land uses that would be allowed, including event center, full-service restaurant, on-sale alcohol establishment, and retail trade and service, with the idea that we know the event center will be expanded in this area, and we would also anticipate the potential for other related types of development in the future. This has gone through Planning Commission with a recommendation for approval.
Mr. Cooper, thank you. Folks, this is a second reading, so if there's anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to the council about this, you certainly can. Is there anyone interested in doing so? Council, any questions or comments of Mr. Cooper?
Move to approve, Entenmann.
Second Anderson.
Councilor Emmons made a motion to approve item 26, seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. Any discussion at all? Yes, Councilor Jameson.
The amendment for the, trying to find it now, but the exception, I think, is what I'm after, for allowing parking to exist under this plaza district versus the regular parking amendment, Chapter 1555, I think it is. I'm just going off memory now.
Yeah, what we've included in this plan development is that the parking and landscaping will be done in accordance with a master plan, and that's the master plan that has been put together by Coke Hazard and Sincombe Detless for the future changes to this parking area.
So the question is on the difference. I think this is hard to figure out, but as I understand it, this is all treated like a campus.
Yes.
Okay, and that's different than, say, a movie theater who's built out at a section somewhere and needs to have so much parking. As a campus, they're allowed to share these buildings, and therefore the parking requirement is reduced.
It's a shared parking as well as a shared scheduling, and it's similar to what we've done with the hospitals as well as with the Augustana and USF campuses. But there will be, within this existing area that's bounded by Western and West, including the Sheraton, there's going to be about 3,400 parking spaces. If you took what's the requirement today of one parking space for every 4 seats in the arena, as well as the convention center, the Sheraton, that would equal about 3,200 parking spaces that's required. The parking master plan said that with more of a shared parking concept that we should look as far out as 2,000 feet distance, and that's what has been presented to the council in the past. So that's what we believe is a reasonable guideline to use for the future.
And that shared approach, that scheduled approach, is that what you refer to as scheduled?
Well, as the council is aware of that, the ultimate goal is to have the entire campus, with the exception of the baseball stadium and Howardwood, under one management entity, so that there would be more of a coordinated scheduling of events in the future, which we believe is a better system to manage parking as well as just the use of that area.
But when there's an event like at Howard Wood, which is outside of that closed circle of entities that we own, Will there be some coordination, though? Because like Dakota Bowl, President's Bowl,
Yes.
there isn't even enough parking for them today. So how would they coordinate, and how would they work together?
Well, those, the scheduling of Howard Wood Field is coordinated with the current arena manager, which is SMG, because they do use our parking lot for that, so that would continue in the future. Mhm. Yep.
Thank you.
There is a motion, and it was seconded. If there is no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 27.
Item 27 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by amending minimal amendments for parking. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Within our zoning ordinance, under these planned development zoning districts, we have various options for making amendments. A major amendment has to go through both Planning Commission and City Council. A minor amendment goes through City Planning Commission. We have a third category called minimal amendments, which are approved administratively. And one of the categories of minimal amendments would allow minimal changes in parking and loading requirements. And recently, we've been asked by the South Dakota Multi-Housing Association to change that provision, basically to eliminate it, so that any reductions or modifications of parking or loading would have to go through at least a public hearing before the Planning Commission and/or City Council, depending on the extent of that change. So that's what this amendment would do, is eliminate a minimal amendment provision for changes to parking and loading requirements.
Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to this? Council, any thoughts?
Move to approve Entenmann.
Second, Jamison.
Councilor Entenmann's made a motion to approve, seconded by Councilor Jamison. This particular item, is there any questions or comments? A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
7-0, it passed. Number 28.
Item 28 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Appendix B, the zoning ordinance of the revised ordinances of the city by adding street-legal ATVs to the definition of personal passenger vehicles. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is coming through the City Council Land Use Committee as a recommendation, as well as the Planning Commission. In April of last year, we made some changes to the parking requirements in residential driveways by allowing 48-hour parking of recreational vehicles. At the time that we did that, we did not change the definition of personal passenger vehicles. So currently, an ATV, which is up on the screen, would be treated the same way as an RV. It could only be parked in a driveway for 48 hours, or it could be parked in a backyard. And what we would do with this amendment that's being presented to you tonight is treat street legal ATVs the same as a personal passenger vehicle, so that they could be parked in a driveway unlimited amount of time. And this is a recommendation, again, that's come forward by the Land Use Committee of the City Council. And then I think once we're done with this, we run out of vehicles that we can park in driveways, so.
Is there anyone in the audience wanting to speak to this item? Very good. Would anybody like to make a motion? Councilor Jamison.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second, Aguilar.
Councilor Jamison's made that motion, seconded by Councilor Aguilar. Is there any further discussion on this? A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes, in hopes that Councilman Jamerson can't come up with any other vehicles.
Very good. That is passed 7-0. Item 29.
Item 29 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, repealing Article 19, Photo Monitoring Systems for Enforcement of Traffic Control Signals, Sections 40-400 through 40-405 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of said city.
Mr. Fifley, welcome.
Thank you. Dave Fifley with the City Attorney's Office. This is the second reading of a repeal of the red light cameras that are at 10th and Minnesota Avenue. Again, this is a an action to honor fully Circuit Court Judge Kathleen Caldwell's decision that ruled that we cannot do a civil penalty and by taking only a photograph of the vehicle. This still keeps in place all the other ordinances that outlaw, various types of red light turns that are in violation of law. This only eliminates one specific area.
Fife, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to this item? Very good. Council, any thoughts?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve item 29, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 30.
Item 30 is a first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by revising Chapter 2 Administration to change the day when council meetings are held and other council procedures.
Sue, welcome.
Thank you. Sue Roust, Interim City Clerk. Recently, your city attorney, Dave Fifley, suggested that you consider holding council meetings on Tuesday nights instead of Monday nights. And he will come forward to explain some of the reasons why. In general, they would allow the city to react to things that might happen over the weekend, to add items to the agenda while giving proper legal notice to them. But he'll cover that. In addition to looking at that change just from a Monday to Tuesday, your city clerk staff also reviewed our procedures to see if we could make improvements in the deadlines we have for submitting agenda items, to see if we could help things flow more quickly. And I have also had a few suggestions to make that would reduce duplication of efforts and clarify some of the duties of the clerk's office. And so there's several things in this proposed ordinance. The ordinance was reviewed by the Public Services Committee at its December 12th meeting and sent on to the full council for consideration. I would like to show you what the new meeting timeline would look like should you adopt this ordinance, and I'll speak to the other suggested changes we have, and also highlight two areas on which there was quite a bit of discussion and not necessarily in a consensus among the Public Service Committee members. Mr. Fifley then will speak about how the change would impact public notice. One thing I want to point out is there's several changes going on here. They are not all interdependent. What I mean by that is you don't have to approve the whole package. I believe they're all valuable things and worth considering, but if you decide, for instance, that you don't want to move your meetings to Tuesday night, I still would recommend that we make some changes to the deadlines for meetings to help things move more quickly. So it isn't an all or none thing. First, let me show you what the weekly timeline would look like under the new under this new ordinance. Give me just a moment here. And let me just run down that list and point out the changes we're suggesting. First of all, right now, the deadline for getting submitting an item to be on a city council agenda is 1 week before the meeting at 10 a.m. And assuming you move to Tuesday meetings, we're suggesting that that deadline now be Tuesday, 1 week before, but at 2 p.m., so giving 4 more hours. I think that could be done and would allow us to get more things on the agenda. The most important change probably is that second one there. Right now, when you have a committee meeting on a Monday, for instance, and you decide to move something forward to the full council, you've already passed the deadline for the next week's meeting. And so things are held up, sometimes for quite a while. For instance, today you had a fiscal committee meeting. If there had been an item that had come out of that meeting that you wanted to forward to the city council, because you've already missed the deadline. The first time that could have been on the city council agenda without special action was the third meeting of January. There's 5 Mondays in January, so the second reading of an ordinance would be the first week in February. I am suggesting that for items that come from the council committees that have all the proper paperwork with them, that we accept those 1 day later. That means in the case of today's public service meeting, you could save 3 weeks' time by changing that deadline by 1 day. I think that's really worth working toward. And then right now we have a special deadline for contract and change orders that go on the consent agenda. That would be in the same comparable position. The other change we are suggesting making is that the agenda go out as a PDF internally to the council, the mayor, and the directors, that it not go out publicly as early as it has in the past. One problem I see is that your agenda goes to the public by 1 p.m. Wednesday, the Wednesday before a meeting. That really locks you into a lot of things. It means that all the agenda items, all the documentation has been put out before the public by then. And so once it's out in public, it's very difficult to make a change. When I was asked to take this temporary position, one of the things I did was to get up to speed, looked out at your website and looked at your upcoming meetings. And I have to admit I was somewhat baffled because I was seeing agenda items that had 5 or 6 different attachments that all seemed to have pretty close to the same name. And I have since learned that some of that is because if there's a correction found to an attachment or a revision, well, you've already got one out in public. You can't take that away, so you put the second one out with it, and then there's confusion for the public. So I think it would be beneficial to the public to change so that the first thing that goes out is just the agenda internally. Then we would have the agenda released with full attachments to SIRE, to your public website, by the end of the day Friday. This would still give the council and all members of the public and the media a chance to see everything over the weekend. And of course the meeting, if it were on Tuesday, that would still give you 3 days to look at it. Then the other addition by moving to Tuesdays is having a deadline of Monday noon to add items to the agenda. Now these wouldn't automatically go on the agenda, but they would go on the proposed agenda that would then be put out 24 hours before the meeting. So any of those new things that now are being done as walk-ins could be put out, posted on your public website with full notice. And that is something that I think Dave will speak a little bit more to. And then you would have your council meeting, in this case, on a Tuesday night. So there's 2 things in there that are grayed out. The agenda review meeting that is currently held with council leadership, the mayor, and the department directors, and the red notes, which you get before each meeting. Those are not addressed in this ordinance change at all. They were not in ordinance before, but those would need to be adjusted, but there would be flexibility outside this schedule. Now, one thing moving to Tuesdays does, along with giving us a little more ability for public notice, is it gives us a little more consistency in meeting date. 2012 is a prime example. There are 7 Monday holidays in 2012. So in all those cases, you're already meeting on Tuesday night. And so sometimes you meet on, most of the time you meet on Monday, sometimes you meet on Tuesday. It's bouncing back and forth. Tonight we're on Tuesday, next week we're on Monday, the following week we're on Tuesday. The downside is elections are on Tuesdays. And so if you made this change, you would have to look at what you would do on election nights. And you have an election night coming up in April. And and a potential runoff on May 1st. Another problem that may arise is, legislative functions or other public functions perhaps may come up a little more on Tuesday nights. So it's going to be kind of a choice for you to decide. But that's the general time frame. As I said, there were 2 issues that were discussed extensively at Public Service Commission, and Dave and I did not feel that we got a final direction from you. excuse me, one is the issue of walk-ins. Walk-ins, there is not in the version of the ordinance that you have before you, that's covered in Section 215, subsection D. And nothing has changed in that at this moment. You still have, under this ordinance, the ability for any 6 members of the council to vote to add an agenda item to the agenda with no previous notice. There was some discussion of this at Public Service Committee, and I think Mr. Fifley will probably want to make a few more few more comments about it, but we just kind of left that for you to discuss. The other one that you discussed was public input, Section 216A. As it is proposed, it would kind of put into ordinance what your practice has been, that people may address the council for up to 5 minutes on an item that is not on the agenda. One of the questions that came up was, what if a person comes and, thank you very much, I appreciate that. What if a person wants to speak to an item that's later on the agenda and tells you they cannot be there later on the agenda? Should you allow them to speak under public input? There was comment on both sides from the committee members, and I don't believe there was a consensus on that. So we just wanted to point out to you that we didn't put anything in the ordinance about that, but we think it's a valid question that perhaps you may want to have more discussion on. There are 3 proposals in the ordinance that come from me, from my observations of how processes work around here, that I wanted to speak to. First of all, the suggestion that we remove references to executive session minutes from the ordinance. This may be one that kind of raised some eyebrows, but the reason I suggest this is your executive session minutes are basically exactly the same information that is in your public minutes. I've read back through your executive minutes for about the last 20 years, and ever since December of 2005, what has been listed in them is the motion to go into executive session, the members who were there, the listing of under what statutory section you have the authority to go into executive session, and then the record that you came out of executive session and the time. That same exact information is in your public minutes. Before, from October 2005 and earlier, there were surprisingly quite a bit of detail in those executive session minutes. I think the change occurred when your previous city clerk started and saw what was being recorded and perhaps thought that in accordance with law, we should make it clear that you were not taking actions in executive session, because ever since she came, it has been very routine. Because of that, I feel it's a duplication of duties. And so that's why I have suggested that that one be taken out. I did check. I knew that Minnehaha County did not take executive session minutes, and I checked, and the Sioux Falls School District does not take executive session minutes either. None of the minutes that I read listed any actions, because of course you can't take actions in closed session. You have to come out and do it in public session. So that is why I had that one in there. The second suggestion that comes from me is to remove the ordinance language that designates the city clerk as your parliamentarian. That is really in conflict with Robert's Rules of Order, which state that the chair of the meeting appoints the parliamentarian. And while it is certainly the case that some of our assistant city clerks have had specialized training in parliamentary procedure and that they have been relied on to answer questions of parliamentary procedure from time to time, the city attorney has been called on for that information as well. I do believe that it puts the assistant city clerks in somewhat, kind of puts them on the spot when they are called on to give parliamentary advice at the same time as they are recording the minutes and monitoring the transmission of your broadcasting and web streaming of your meetings. There's a lot on their plates. And so I just think it would make sense to take that ordinance specification out and leave the flexibility for the chair to rely on advice from either the assistant city clerks or the city attorney or whoever that person feels is most appropriate. The third one is the one where I'm going to just tell you, I'm going to backpedal right now. I had suggested removing the requirement that executive orders be filed with the city clerk. The reason is I saw that as a duplication as well. Human Resources maintains the official file of executive orders and distributes them to all departments. That is by executive order. And so my suggestion was also they are available on Insight, the city's intranet. And so my question was, why are we duplicating what Human Resources is already doing? But as I was reviewing minutes of past meetings, I discovered something interesting, and that is that through the end of 2008, the city clerk reported to the council on all changes in executive orders as part of the staff report in the informational meetings. And I thought that was very interesting, and then it seemed to have stopped and never happened again. And so I asked those council members who had been on the council at that time if any of them could remember why that changed, why they no longer had those reports, because it sounded like kind of a good idea to me. And Councilor Brown responded to me and said he thought perhaps because it was now available, now all the council members get the executive orders by email, maybe it was felt it wasn't needed anymore. But as the discussion went on with him and council leadership, some more comments were made that, you know, one reason we might have them here is because when they're on file in the clerk's office, they're public record. They're available for anybody to look at. Now, I understand that some members of the media regularly go to Human Resources to look at them as well. But I think people may think that the clerk's office is a good place to go and get that information. And I also happen to think it's a great idea to have them reported in informational meetings. I don't think it takes up that much time, and it's one more way to inform our citizens about what's going on in the administration of their government. And so that is a proposal that I had in there, and I think I'm going to probably request that change not be approved, but instead that you change your procedures so that from now on you have regular reports from staff at your informational meetings when there are executive order changes. I don't think I mentioned that in informational meeting today we talked about when this change would be implemented. The earliest it could be implemented would be February 7th. However, that is the date of South Dakota Municipal League's day at the legislature. And so we think would not have a quorum. And so the consensus today was that we begin this change with the first meeting in March, should you decide to go forward with the change to Tuesday nights. I think I will turn it over to Mr. Fifley, and then I'll be available should you have any questions.
Thank you. Dave Fifley again with the City Attorney's Office. I want to thank Sue Roust and her team for all their input and guidance and assistance in bringing this revision proposal to you that you certainly had suggested that we do. In a 30,000-foot overview, essentially, the law requires you to have 24 hours notice for any posting of an agenda for a public meeting. In reviewing how we do things currently, we're not taking advantage, like most other cities in South Dakota, that do it later in the week. We gain several days here by making this proposal. The way we do it now, if you have a Monday night meeting, your actual deadline is not 24 hours, it's 72 hours or approximately Friday, no matter what, because you lose those 2 days on the weekend. I've been here 18 months and I've realized a lot can happen every day of the week, and there are so many things that need to come before the council that we always run up being past the deadline. The whole purpose of this meeting change is to try and alleviate those problems, alleviate the issue of trying to walk in items at the last minute where you have the 24-hour notice issue staring you straight in the face and you're wondering, can we do this? If we do it as proposed, we would be able to have items brought in on Monday by noon, still be able to fully comply with the law, but you also have a bit of a of a policing mechanism in it, so to speak, where you have to have a majority vote on each item added by that Monday. So it's not like people can procrastinate, wait till the last minute, put something on the agenda on Monday at 11:59 a.m. and think it'll just fly through. This creates kind of a unique exception, and again, it's completely up to your discretion as long as you're obeying that 24-hour notice. Clerk Rouse did an excellent job explaining quite a bit of this to you. 7 of the 8 of you were present at the Public Services Committee meeting where I went through in great depth in terms of all the different specific changes that were made. I'd be happy to answer any questions. But
Councilors, any questions of Sue? Yes. Councilor
Just
Brown?
one quick one, and we have to do what's best for Sioux Falls, but I'm curious, you mentioned other communities. Do you know what night is common with other cities? And I thought most of them were Monday, but I don't know that.
From what I can gather, Councilor Brown, a lot of them are doing Tuesday nights, and specifically, I was at a municipal attorneys meeting a couple months ago, probably late September, and they were all talking about being able to add items as long as it's only 24 hours in advance and you're losing with the weekend again. And that's, if I recall, it's been a long time since I acted as a city attorney for Pierre. I believe we were doing it on Tuesday nights. And I have a vivid memory of back in the pre-internet days where our city finance officer would take down the posted agenda, tack on a new one on our bulletin board, say it was revised, and highlight the new change. And as long as it was a day in advance, we were fine. And I think he would also call the Capital Journal. But it was a very good system there because we had that extra day in case some items come.
Thank you.
Council, would anybody like to set a date of hearing and second reading for Monday, January 9th, 7 p.m. for item 30?
So moved, Aguilar.
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Aguilar has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Anderson, Jr. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Oh, yes, Councilor Jameson. I'm sorry.
I just have one issue with this change. Is under Section 2-9, presiding officer. I'm just not sold yet on the idea of the chair or the mayor deciding all questions of order. You know, the only times that the procedures come into play is when it's a complicated issue, and I think it's generally a budget time when we're making amendments to amend an amendment, and we're all pretty well tied up in those decisions, and some of them are pretty personal, and because they might be our amendments, and I just like the idea of the clerk handling it because their focus is to make sure the record is kept as it is supposed to be kept, and their focus is on the process and the procedure. It's not about the topic. And I just think that we could lend ourselves to a problem of having the mayor or acting mayor make a decision about the order when, in fact, the Parliament procedure is actually incorrect and we don't have a thing to say about it and the decision is passed. I just like the idea of the third party. Just wanted to bring that up as an awareness.
Councilor Buck?
I wouldn't disagree with Councilor Jameson. I think there's some value to that, but I would also say that there are always going to be 7 or 8 people sitting up here that if the mayor rules incorrectly, there will be discussion about it. And I don't think that this change would take away the ability of the mayor or whoever's sitting in that chair to lean over and say to the assistant clerk or to lean over and say to the attorney. And I see him on a regular basis over there whipping out books, checking things. I think it takes some burden off of that assistant city clerk because, she or he is really doing a lot there. I mean, they sit very quietly and don't appear to be doing much, but they're doing a ton of stuff while they're keeping track of what we're doing. So I tend to favor this particular change because of that, but I don't think it precludes conversation about it.
Councilor Jameson?
I just don't understand quite the benefit other than relieving pressure from the city clerk. Is that what you're saying is the benefit?
If I might, the other piece of it is that they're not all trained as parliamentarians.
Okay.
And to make that a requirement of the job, which if we leave that in there, it really is a requirement of the job, then I think that creates some issues too that we maybe don't necessarily want to deal with. I'm not sold on it either way, but I'm not uncomfortable with taking that out.
Council, good job, good discussion. If I could have a roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 31.
Item 31 is a first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Chapter 18, Garbage and Recycling, by amending rates for use of the sanitary landfill and adding a waiver provision for landfill fees.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Trent Luber's Office of Public Works. I also have with me Dave McElroy, Sanitary Landfill Superintendent. The two items or the two changes we have for you to consider tonight are the contaminated soils disposal rate. Right now, we charge $15 a ton for contaminated soils, and after getting a regulatory approval from the DENR that we could use a portion of our landfill for a soil monofill, we looked into our contaminated soil disposal rate more deeply. Our cost of service model returned a reduction in cost from $15 to $10. This is an important item for us and for development in the community. Redevelopment areas may have contaminated soils that need to be dealt with. So from a development standpoint, this would lower the cost of disposal for any of those contaminated soils going forward. The other item that we have for you to consider is waiver of landfill fees. There are four different conditions here to waive landfill fees. This gives the Director of Public Works the ability to do that. Three of them are common practices that we've done in the past. Community cleanups like Project Nice and Keep, the landfill pass that everyone gets in their mailbox in the spring, and also wheelchair ramp program, rake-a-thons, those types of programs for elderly and disabled. We've waived those landfill fees associated with those projects in the past. The fourth one is an opportunity that was presented to us recently. The DENR has a tire disposal grant, and what that allows us to do is they'll reimburse us for the disposal costs of tires for the 5-county landfill region. For residential customers and for agricultural or farmer customers out in the 5-county region, they'll reimburse us for the disposal costs. But they'll only reimburse us for what our disposal costs are for our disposal contractor, which is $124.50. Our current landfill rate is $135 per ton. So this allows the director to waive the difference when the total fee is substantially replaced by a grant. I'd be open for any questions if anybody has any questions.
Trent, Dave, thank you. Council, any questions at all? Would anybody want to set a date of hearing and second reading for Monday, January 9th at 7 p.m. for item 31?
So move Anderson.
Second, Entenmann.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. If there is no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Before we move to item 32, Councilor Jameson is going to excuse himself. Thank you. Item number 32.
Item 32 is a resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to certain citizen boards.
Thank you. Would you mind reading those for the City of Sioux Falls, please? Thank you.
For the Veterans Park Advisory Board, Robert Jamison and Jean Tourneau. For the Public Parking Advisory Board, Rod Carlson and Dan Johnson.
Very good. Council, any questions or comments or motions?
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Box made a motion to approve item 32, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 33.
Item 33 is a report of the December 27th, 2011 Notice of Transfer of Appropriations within major organizational units.
Council, any further comments or questions or motions?
Move to adjourn, Entenmann.
Second, Jamison.
Councilor Entenmann, thank you so much. Councilor Jameson, thank you for seconding that. Is there any discussion on that? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Great work tonight. This meeting is adjourned. Make it a great year, Sioux Falls.